Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Semi-Professional Academic Podcast. As always, I am your host with the most unpaid parking tickets, Jakeb Watts. Now, last time on this podcast, we were talking with Maddie Foley. And before we had to cut it short, she and I were in the middle of a talk about an experience in animal behavior class. And so what we're going to do is we're going to rewind just a little bit so you can catch the end of it. And then we're going to jump into part 2 of the episode. Okay. And here we go.
So it's not like it was like right away. Like, how did I get 8 minutes into the trial without noticing a second one? So I'm like, this is literally the only explanation. I'm so confused. Like, what happened? And the professor is like, well, now you're just being ridiculous. You probably just grabbed 2. He was like, now, if you spend as much time, focusing on what you were doing, that maybe you wouldn't have put 2 minnows in the tank. And I was like, I didn't. The audacity.
Yeah, that semester was so fun because this professor, like,
the gall of that man.
Oh, wow. Like, he had a tendency to, in a sense, argue for the sake of arguing.
Yeah, pretty much.
And me and Maddie were so mentally down bad that we were just like giving it right back like a million times.
Literally.
And I loved it because the rest of the class, and like no shade to anyone, but like y'all were not the vibe. Like y'all were literally like complain and be like, some days I just wish I would tell them off. And be like, then do it. But then like when it came to it, y'all were just like
literally
crickets. And so like me and Maddie had to like do it. And then I remember I got put into quarantine because keep in mind this was also like peak COVID era. So we had like the masks on, everything, and like I got exposed to COVID, so I had to go and isolate. And then I had like Maddie in the class still, so I would like text Maddie and be like, what's going on? And Maddie would be like, oh, like, like so and so said this, and then but then when it came to it, like they didn't do it. And like
I remember because when you were in quarantine, he made a comment about how because you weren't there, like he like walked in, he was like, oh, Jakeb's in quarantine. He was like, oh, what did he say? He was like something about like he couldn't smell the attitude in the air, so that's how he knew you weren't there when he walked in. He's like, it didn't smell like attitude in here today, or something like that. And I was like, that's crazy because I'm still here. It's like, you think I'm gonna let him talk about my boy like that?
Yeah,
like, you think I'm gonna let that go unnoticed?
Yeah, and like, and everyone in there that did not say anything else, you fake, because like you out here literally like texting me, DMing me, and be like, oh my gosh, it's so annoying. Like I hate when he does this. But then when it comes to it, y'all will laugh at the joke.
Literally.
I love how like when I came back immediately, like not immediately, but like when I came back, I walked in, I immediately, because this was in Lent, and he said that like he was like giving up candy or something.
Yeah.
And the week before, Maddie had said, Maddie had said that there was like a student that came to like tour, like a prospective student that came to tour. And he goes, yeah, like I'm not really like very, like, I forget exactly what it was, but he's like, yeah, I'm not really like egotistical. Like I'm not really like standoffish or anything like that, which lies, a Manelli lies. And so Maddie had come in and said that like, oh, is that like what you're giving up for Lent or something?
Oh, I remember that.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to keep this in the back of my head, because like this man had talked some mad shit about me while I was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And Maddie's a real one. Like she didn't let that go unchecked. And I
was like live tweeting this class to him. I'd be like, this is what he said.
Which loved. And then I came in like, I think it was like that Friday.
Something like that. Like it was at the end of the week.
Yeah. So I came in on a Friday, and someone brought in like candy or something, and he goes like, oh, I can't have that. I gave that up for Lent. So I was like, oh, did you give up your attitude and Lent? And no, not attitude. I said ego. I said ego.
Yes.
And he goes, there's a difference between being confident and having ego. And I was like, I know, when you do the former, I'll let you know. And he goes, you're just as cocky as I am. I was like, no, this is a facade.
The difference is I admit it.
The difference is I admit it.
Beedle, back up, buddy.
Yeah.
Sorry. My 100-pound dog is attempting to get into my lap.
I just wanted to share that like story, like those stories, because that was such like there were such defining moments like in our friendship that I think.
Literally.
And I loved it. Like Maddie, like I know you have like talking points, and we're definitely gonna get into them, but like I want to ask you a question first, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
So like you and I are both two neurodivergent people who have like studied like the sciences, and like I just want like your like opinion on like how that is, because like I know like for me, like I don't set schedules like very well. Like it has like a lot of it comes like from when I get stuff done, it has to come from like a motivation aspect of it, and I have a hard time setting like schedules for myself because I know like really most of the time I can just like move them around.
Oh,
And
100%.
yeah, so I just like kind of like wanted to like get your opinion on that, and like about like how like having ADHD or like being neurodivergent and like within academia, and like how like that kind of looks for the people who may not know.
It is really difficult because it definitely comes from like, and this is just my experience because ADHD affects everybody differently. And I am somebody who's on medication for it, and not everybody is. But in my experience, like, it is really difficult because if there is no motivation, like I can't get anything done. And I personally struggle really difficult with like knowing my priorities, in the sense of being able to tell myself like, oh, this assignment is due Wednesday, this assignment is due Thursday, this assignment is due Friday. So I need to get them done in that order.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the assignment that's due Friday is something that I'm excited about doing and something that I am interested in doing, I'm going to immediately want to jump into that one.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to be Tuesday night at 2 a.m. and I'm going to be like, I have something due tomorrow. Like, oh crap.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big struggle for me, was especially because another thing I struggle with is, I know this is a very universally like experienced and talked about thing, especially with people that have ADHD, is having hyperfixations.
Mm-hmm.
And my issue was I struggled a lot with prioritizing my schoolwork over my hyperfixation, because like I heard somebody on TikTok reference it as like dopamine mining.
Yeah.
Where your hyperfixation is something that like gives you this dopamine and you enjoy that feeling. And I was so stressed out and so exhausted all the time that that's all I wanted to do. Like I went through like a painting phase. I went through an embroidery phase. I went through a sticker making phase. I went as far as to open an Etsy shop to sell these stickers that I was making. And I only made one sale, but I did make a sale. Woo! And then I closed the Etsy shop. And like all these things. I remember when I went through Big Little for my sorority. And for those of you out there that don't know, in sororities, when you do Big Little, it's very common and widely acknowledged that people, the bigs, make and like paint cute canvases for their littles. Like you can paint like funny quotes, you can paint just like cool pictures of things they're into, you can paint like your sorority letters or symbol or whatever on there, stuff like that. And when I went through Big Little, my current hyperfixation at that moment was painting. And so typically, you know, because we went to a smaller school and my sorority was not a very big chapter, typically girls were painting like maybe 10, maybe 15 canvases for their littles. I made over 40.
I remember like you were going in on this.
Like I probably made around 50 canvases. Like between 45 and 50 canvases for my little, because I was like, this is what I enjoy doing right now. This is what I want to do. And so I spent all of my time doing that. And my schoolwork suffered because of it. And literally, my senior year, I had a class, and it was an upper level class. And my professor, I had her 2 or 3 times before. And like, as somebody who at the time was very much so interested in large animal veterinary and like the macro side of biology, and because a lot of my drive and a lot of my success were dictated by the motivation and my interest in the subject, and this professor taught only micro related classes like genetics and microbiology and things like that. I had not excelled in any of her previous classes because it just was not something that I was interested in. It wasn't something I enjoyed learning about, like all that kind of stuff. And like her teaching style, which no hate, no tea, no shade, but
Right.
like everybody learns differently. And her teaching style was not one that I learned well from. And so after about 3 weeks in this class, and I was really struggling, she was like, what can I do to help you? And we had like a hour and a half long meeting about like what, like, because I was very upfront about like why I was struggling. Like I was like, I, have ADHD. This is why I'm struggling, like all this stuff. And so she ended up reprinting a new copy of the syllabus for me with all of the deadlines moved up like between 2 and 4 days.
That's awesome.
And she gave it to me and she was like, hey, like just a heads up, I made some changes to the syllabus. So in my mind, like unbeknownst to me, she hadn't changed the deadlines for the rest of the class. But in my mind, everything was due 2 or 3 days before it actually was. And so I actually started turning things in on time early. Even I like would be more prepared because I was like, oh, I need this for class today. So like this article, we have to print it and bring it to class today. So I'd bring it in on Monday. We didn't actually need it till Wednesday. But because I had already printed it out, I would just leave it in my backpack. And so I already had it. And that helped me tremendously that she was willing to do that for me. But not every professor is willing to do that. And not everybody would think to ask for something like that. Like I didn't even, that was my senior year. And that's not something I had ever thought of before. Because if I had tried to do that on my own, like you said, I would have known in the back of my mind that schedule could be moved around. And so it wouldn't have done what it needed to do.
I think a lot of people don't realize like people like with ADD, ADHD aren't like purposely bad on managing time. Like I know for me, like my comprehension of like how long a task takes is not accurate. So naturally, like I will move like big project stuff, like exams, papers, like at like towards the last minute, because that way I can get all the other shit first and then just kind of like spend that like whole day just focusing on that.
Oh, 100%. And like, I remember more than once just having a complete breakdown and just sobbing because I knew that there was important things that I needed to do, like study for an exam or finish a project or an assignment. And I just could not find the drive or the motivation. Like, for context, my ADHD is bad enough that if I don't take my medication, if I were to go to a class, like if I look back on notes, I can tell what days I didn't take my medication because it would be, I would write the heading of like that, slide or whatever heading was on the board. And then I would literally write like the first word of every sentence because I couldn't get it together enough to even write what was on the slide. Like I couldn't convince myself to do that.
Right.
And I remember having like breakdowns and sobbing because I was like, I just wish my brain worked normally because I don't understand how people can say like, because my friends would be like, oh, I really need to do this homework. And then they would sit down and do it and just get it done. And I couldn't comprehend how that was possible. And I would literally sob and just like, I was just like, I just wish my brain worked normally. And it didn't. Yeah. And I couldn't understand what I had to do. And I tried everything. My dog might have to pee.
Okay. Well, on that note, let's just take a little break. And we are back.
But yeah, I struggled so much with coming to terms with the fact that my brain didn't work like everyone else's, and not only just accepting that, but being okay with that. And I tried everything under the sun. I mean, I tried planners, I tried apps, I tried like calendar apps, I tried those. I even went as far as to purchase an app that you set a window where like you're like, okay, I need to study from this time to this time, and it like locks you out of all of your apps except like your cell phone app while you're working. And like I ended up getting an iPad because I was so bad about keeping up with notes, or like if I didn't take my medication, like if I ran out or something, because I lived almost an hour away from home and I couldn't get my prescription transferred to school. So I would have to go home to pick up my medication. And if I ran out in the middle of the week and didn't have time to go all the way home to pick it up, and I ran out, like I would have days that were just blank in my notebook, and it bugged the crap out of me. So I ended up getting an iPad to take notes in so that I would be better about, having them, and like, cause I did OneDrive so I could access them from anywhere.
We love OneDrive.
Like, oh yeah. It was just really hard for me to recognize that the system wasn't built for people whose brains worked the way mine did. And no matter what I did, I was never going to fit into that system, and it was never going to work for me. So I had to come up with a way to play the system and get it to work for me. And we obviously spent a long time discussing the unhealthy way in
Mhm.
which I was able to do that.
Yeah.
Because I found that's a system that worked for me and I just stuck with it. I didn't
Mhm.
bother exploring other options, which looking back, I regret because there are big chunks of school that I don't remember all that well because
Mhm.
I was running on, over the course of 5 days, getting 10 hours of sleep.
Mhm.
And I was just floating through life.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. And I test that a lot because especially going from undergrad to my master's program now, where I put more emphasis on my mental health. I got counseling, got therapy, I prioritized my sleep, my diet, everything. The way I just perform so much better in classes now and academically than I did when I was in undergrad is insane. And especially I can't I'm so glad you said the system wasn't built for neurodivergent people because it wasn't.
No.
And for anyone else who's neurodivergent, don't feel like you have to follow what everyone else is doing. Like talk with your doctor, talk with the student services center, talk with your professors. This kind of goes into a point I made on the last episode, but be vulnerable with people, tell your story. You're not making excuses. You are literally your brain is literally wired to not work the same as everyone else's. So give yourself that opportunity to succeed and just be like, hey, I'm not really getting this. My brain's just not working like that. And this is the best advice I've ever gotten. And so I'm going to share it with y'all. Don't try to make your neurodivergent brain follow non-neurodivergent pathways. It's not going to work. You are going to fail. And then you're going to feel like you failed as a person when that just doesn't work for you. So give yourself that grace and time to explore different paths and systems, what works for you. And then when you find what works for you, use that, but in a healthy way. Don't be like me and Maddie where we go days without sleeping. That doesn't work for anybody.
No. And I'm really glad that you brought up, you know, your postgraduate school, going to grad school and stuff, because I'm somebody that after graduation, because I had no idea, because I knew that I wasn't 100% sure that that school was one I wanted anymore, I went directly into working. And for those of you that don't know me, I am engaged and I got engaged right before I graduated.
I was there.
And so, yes, he was. But I got engaged, and then after I graduated, I graduated on May 28th, and then I started my job June 1st. Like I
That's a huge
literally went
turnaround.
from graduation to working.
Mhm.
And it was you know, so many people in life will tell you you won't get anywhere without a college degree. If you want a career, you have to go to college and all this stuff. I can confirm. I started at my job before graduation, and the only difference was I started working full time post grad. Can confirm a $1 raise. I went from making $10.50 an hour pre-graduation to $11.50 an hour post-graduation. I got a $1 raise.
Wow.
I paid debt, but I'm making one extra dollar an hour. And it's not I was working, no offense to people out there that work in retail or work in fast food, but I did those jobs all through high school and stuff. And realistically, I didn't, having a degree was not something that was not necessarily required, but expected to work in those jobs. But working at an animal hospital, most of the people there have degrees, if not all. So I got my degree and I was like, oh, sweet. Like now I'm really going to be working in this field. I made $1 an hour more.
Mm-hmm.
And like me and my fiance moved in together. We got a second dog. We have 2 beautiful dogs.
Yay. We love dogs in this house.
One of them has an Instagram. Go follow it. But I ended up leaving the animal hospital because I was like, all through college, I was told, like, if I go work somewhere and use my degree, I'll be making all this money. I'll be making this crazy amount of money.
Someone lied to you several times.
And I left my job and I went and started working somewhere where I used my degree, which I ended up getting laid off and was without a job for almost a month. And talking about the job market is a whole different topic. It's should be a whole episode in itself.
Yeah.
But now I'm working in a laboratory using my degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I make good money. I make $20 and some change an hour.
That's awesome.
Which is nothing to, scoff at.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the, if everybody tells you, I have always joked that college is a pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
Because, I was always told, like, if you go to college and you get a job with your degree right away, you'll be making so much money right out of school that, you'll be able to pay off your loans and all this stuff. But the reality of it is, the only situation in which that happens is if you go to college and then you go and further your education and do a master's program. And then you go further and do a PhD, or you go to medical school, or you go to veterinary school. You go through school and all this crazy schooling and you get the job where you're making crazy money, then yeah. But the debt to income ratio, the more school you go to, the higher your income has to be to pay off that crazy amount of debt. And in order to get that crazy high income, you have to go into all this crazy high debt and go through all these levels of school.
Yeah.
And sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. And that's kind of like what I said. It was like, some people are like, oh, like, well, I'll do a master's and then like I'll do this. Be like, don't do a program simply because you think you need to be successful. Like, I know, like me, like I'm passionate about academia. Like, I want to work in academia. That's why I'm doing all this. And also, like, my master's was paid for, so that helped. Yeah. But like, and just to tie back to like what you were talking about first, Maddie, don't feel like you have to destroy your finances, yourself, your mental health to fit this expectation of success, because success is a lot of different things. And if say, for example, like if you get the job, you get the house, you get the career, it means nothing if you're miserable. So please prioritize your mental well-being and your happiness first, because this is supposed to be hard. It shouldn't be to the point where it kills you.
Right. And the big overarching theme that I wanted to touch on today was expectation. And the expectations that people set for themselves, the expectations that academia has for those in it, the expectations that people have for you when you say, like, oh, I'm going to college. Oh, I want to be this when I grow up, whatever. Throw them out the window. Because there is not one single thing in academia, in life, in the world that is exactly as you expect it to be. Because I am someone, I expected to go to college, to go to vet school, to be on the path, and nothing has been how I thought it was. And the most toxic part of the whole thing were my own expectations of myself, of the world, of my, what I wanted to do, all of that. Don't don't expect anything of yourself sounds really bad. Don't set expectations of yourself that require you thinking about where you're going to be more than 48 hours from now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because when you do that, you're making all these assumptions that you're going to do, you're going to be someone that is built to go to school. You're going to, flourish and thrive in an academic setting. You're going to not want to change your career path or find anything else that you're interested in, at any point. Mm-hmm. You're making all of these assumptions that you don't 100% know to be true. Mm-hmm. So don't set expectations about what life is going to be like or what things are going to look like more than 48 hours ahead of time. Because, I could say, I expect myself to be on time to work. I'm off Mondays and Tuesdays from my job. I work four 10s a week. So instead of 5 8-hour shifts, I work 4 10-hour shifts. I could say I'm going to be on time to work on Wednesday. Well, I could go and get in my car to work. I have to be at work at 5:30 a.m. I leave my house at 5. I could go to get in my car to work at 5, just like I do every day before work, and go, and there could be a car crash. Mm-hmm. And I could be in traffic for 3 hours. Mm-hmm. And I could beat myself up about that. Mm-hmm. And be like, oh, I told myself I was going to be on time. But that's out of my control.
Yeah. And there's going to be a lot of things that will defer your path. Some that you do have control. A lot of times it's not going to have control over. So I'm so glad you said that, Maddie. It's fine to have goals, but don't put them into expectations to where you fail if you don't meet them. Because there's going to be so many things that are out of your control that will either make it completely impossible or just not realistic. And just realize that you are so much more than a program acceptance, a job title, a certain score. Have goals, but don't make them expectations.
100%. My biggest struggle in life has been being okay with where I am. Mm-hmm. For a long time, in school, in high school, in college, after graduation, I constantly felt like a failure. I felt like I had failed myself. I felt like I had failed my family because I wasn't doing what I said I was going to do. I wasn't on the path that I had, always told them I was going to take. I felt like I had failed all of my friends that were pushing me and rooting for me to do the things I had said I set my mind to. But, I realized fairly recently, I'm working a job that I love. Mm-hmm. I'm living with the person that I love. I have mm-hmm. 2 incredible dogs that I love more than life itself. I live comfortably. We pay all of our bills on time. I always have food to eat. I have clothes to wear. They're not always clean because I'm still not great at doing laundry.
One step at a time.
But I in no way have failed. Right. I'm not living on the street. I'm not, addicted to meth. I'm not like going hungry. I'm not in prison. I'm not pregnant. Like, no hate to people that get pregnant young. It's just not my gig.
Yeah.
Not my deal. But like I'm happy. My mental health for the first time in a long time is good.
We love that.
And I'm so proud of myself for coming as far as I have. And I'm proud of you for coming as far as you have. Because Lord knows we've seen each other at our lowest.
And I really don't like, and like I don't mean this like to be sad, but like there was like times where like me and Maddie both said like we don't want to exist anymore.
Literally.
And like just finding that, kind of releasing ourselves from those expectations that society and we put on ourselves, and just like letting ourselves be happy with where we are, realizing the work that we do is good enough and that we deserve like to be happy, to not hate ourselves all the time because our paths changed. It is to me it's the most powerful thing in the world. And
It
I'm
is.
I'm just so thankful that we made it through it. And like I really do feel like we just seem happier. Like,
And I feel like I can take a step back now and realize like how far I've come and how well I'm doing, because I mean, I said at the very beginning, college was 4 years of the worst mental health I've ever had. The worst my mental health has ever been. And it was to the point where like I would have full blown panic attacks. And, I was like, I don't want to exist anymore because I got a bad grade on a test. Because I, had 24 hours to write a 10-page essay because I had so much other stuff going on that I had just completely forgotten about it. And the fact that that stuff was such a big deal to me that I was genuinely like, I remember one time we were sitting in the car and I was talking to you about how I was so stressed because if I failed this class that I was taking at the time, it was going to wreck. Like, it was going to have detrimental effects at my shot of getting into vet school. And I literally looked at you and I was like, if I fail this class, I might just disappear off the face of the earth. Like, I might just wake up one morning and get in my car and never speak to anybody ever again. Because in my mind, that was going to be easier than admitting to and accepting the fact that I might not get into vet school. I might fail this class. I might have to tell everybody that I couldn't hack it. And looking back, that is such a silly thing to feel that way over.
It's so silly. And like,
but to me, it was the end of the world.
No, because like same. And like, I think that when you kind of like you said, like you get a chance to step back, you realize that at times you were your own worst enemy, putting all this pressure on yourself. And now that like I've kind of like taken a step back and you have too, like I think it just worked out for the best of us. So like, and like we're wrapping it up here, but like just if there's nothing else that you guys take from this, just have some fun, like, and enjoy your people, enjoy your tribe, make some memories, and don't put all this pressure on yourselves to fit expectation. Have goals, but fuck expectations.
Just, literally, remember, it's not that fucking serious. It's
No,
not
it's
that
never
serious
that fucking
because
serious.
let's be real. In today's day and age, there is so much you can do without a college degree. Like, let's be real for a second. If I really wanted to, not that I want to, nor do I think I ever would, just because of the type of person that I am. But if I really wanted to, I could go make my money shaking my ass on the internet. Like, I could start an OnlyFans.
Yep.
I could, like, literally, I own a Cricut. I could make t-shirts and sell them on Etsy. And no, I would not make a fortune. But there are I could do that and then, get a job waitressing up the street. Like, there is so much you can do in this life without putting all that pressure on yourself. Don't feel like you have to succeed and like live up to these expectations in order to be good enough. You're already good enough.
Agreed.
You are already good enough. Everything else is just icing on the cake.
What a good line. Well, Maddie, I know that you have to run off, and I probably should actually do some grading. But thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. You know I love you, and I love getting to hang out with you and getting your talk on this.
Yes, I love you, and thank you so much for having me. I love the podcast. I've been listening to it, and so I was really excited.
Thank you. And
big fan.
Yes. And for those of you who are listening, be sure to follow us on Instagram and on Twitter for updates about the podcast episodes and little previews for sound bites that are appearing. And remember, we post a new episode every Friday.
Yes. Feel free to follow my dog on Instagram.
Yeah. Also follow Maddie, and she will appear. Her @ will appear when the episode drops, and will be on the visual soundbite that should have dropped either Thursday or Wednesday. I would like to say I have a set schedule, but there's semi-professional in the title for a reason.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, have a good night, tomorrow, whatever timeline you're on. I don't know. I might go back to bed. It may be 10:47, but I'm tired.
Everybody go take a nap and eat your favorite food.
Yeah. Also,
go eat a snack.
Yeah.
Drink water.
Run to McDonald's, get a McChicken, light mayo, add Big Mac sauce, and get a large Diet Coke and call it the Maddie and Jakeb special. That should be the next meal that drops at McDonald's.
Literally.
All right. Good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.